This is this is a very, very difficult topic to break down as to how you get to entrepreneurship. But what we've tried to do here is zero in on different factors that people experience. If there are a couple of you who watch Dr. House, you know that moment, usually 35 minutes into the episode. He has that aha moment. Those of you who are acquainted to history know of Archimedes and his eureka moment, running out of the bathtub, holding a towel, half naked. And the more recent one, which has been in the newspapers, is about entrepreneurs who get a big idea about big money and they just take it on. And the one that's probably most endemic to all of us is the shower moment or the driving moment, where you have an idea and you think, right, I can see that on Verymark. Let's do this. But I think every situation's got a more personal story. So we'll start off with Kennedy's story.
Okay, yeah, so every journey, I can almost guarantee you that every entrepreneur, the end of their journey is never quite looks like where they started. And I mean, by no means saying that we've reached that end, otherwise I'd be a lot fatter and have more money and have that Russian girlfriend that we all aspire to have. But I can almost guarantee you that it's a lot different to where we originally started. And I'll give you a quick story about how we came to where we are now. We originally were looking at Bluetooth technology, and we were saying, Bluetooth is where it's at. We need to go and create 1,000 hotspots in the country, and that will really solve the communication problems between clients and consumers. And then Bluetooth didn't go quite according to plan. So our idea went with it. Now I remember we sat behind of a car, the four of us, and we were like, guys, it's over. The dream, it's done. But it's about that perseverance. And I mean, we'll get to the why a bit further, but if the why is correct, the challenges seem a lot smaller to face.
And my one was a bit of a more personal one. I've always known Kennedy for 4 years since we ran for Common Student Council in first year. And we sort of branched different ways. He went the rag sort of business way. I went into politics. I just wanted to be like Obama. But I think the most important thing is about opportunities, right? I got an opportunity once to pitch an idea, and I actually didn't want to pitch it. But then I managed to execute it appropriately, and it gave me some leg room. But straight after that, you sort of realize that every single time you've got an idea, or every single time you make some progress, there's always another hurdle. And the next one for me was, I was currently studying, about to finish my degree. I also wanted a big bank to take me in and, life would go well. But here was an opportunity begging for me to come in. And I had to drop it after parents had spent probably about 200, 300,000 on my school fees. And I sort of found that affirmation from God and family and friends to keep going the entrepreneurial route. But the second thing, the more important one, was straight after you decide to be an entrepreneur, you realize that all these fuzzy, fluffy things that we read about in business day, that's not how it actually works. You have to start building a business, and a business has got rules, and these business rules, no one tells you about them. They just say, you go in and you can do it. And the first one we faced was that we needed a team. Kumbi picking up phone calls, writing emails, meeting the client, and also saying I'm offering the service wasn't going to cut it. Actually, it deterred more clients than brought them in. And straight after getting a team, we realized the most important thing for us, especially being young entrepreneurs, is not to think of the journey as a personal one, but to think about more of a relay, where Kennedy would start an interaction, pass the button stick on to me, and pass it on to the next one, and finish the whole loop, which is very different from what we saw and read about in the newspapers or on the web, where Mark Zuckerberg started on his own. In Africa, it was more about collaboration. But the second most important thing was getting the concept and building it right.
Take a step back. Kumbi likes to talk a lot. But, switch off from all the older people for now, and let me speak to the students. I recognize how daunting first year can be. And I think the greatest challenge that we all face as students is, that overwhelming feeling that you get, entering this whole new world, and it can be so big, and you just don't know where to start. And the biggest challenge any budding entrepreneur will face is, engaging with like-minded people. having those conversations with people that will not tell you that you're crazy for thinking that you could change the world, you can change the education system within South Africa. But really speaking to people who will encourage it, the fools, But, I found that the more I stopped watching Dr. House, stopped watching Grey's Anatomy and whatever other series was currently available, and the more I started attending events where like-minded people might be interacting. It might just be one introduction, or it might just be one sentence that someone tells you that sparks something else in you. And the more I did that, and the more I went out into the world, the more I started attracting like-minded people. And the team that I currently have, is an exact example of how we came together. So then the concept, any incubation program will always tell you that, it's one thing to live in your head, the next minute is put it on paper, and the next is to build some kind of traction. So we went out and built the concept, and this allowed us to walk into any meeting, but almost separate ourselves from anyone with just a sentence about what they'd like to do or a paragraph about what they did. And this really helped us.
But almost every experience and journey has got a roller coaster feel. At one stage, you feel like the nuts are falling off or the wheels are falling off the bicycle. And ours was a similar one, but I think the most important one, the one that breaks the camel's back, is after you gain a bit of traction and you think you're there at the doorstep and you start doubting yourself. And we had that. And that was our why moment, because after a year of building a product, things weren't exactly where we wanted it to be, but we weren't that far off as well. And the big one for us was, why are we actually doing this?
So yeah, again, people have this misconception that, I've seen Aliko Dangote, I've seen Bill Gates, I've seen all these amazing entrepreneurs go out and build a successful story amongst themselves and make all this money. And we're almost enticed by the wealth that comes with it in order to go into that space. And the biggest challenge that we all face is, whether we go into the corporate world or we go out and take the risk after your $500,000 investment that your parents have just pumped in and go and say you want to build something of your own. But, holding on to the bucks, the Russian girl, the Lamborghini, when you find that that's what's driving you, the challenges that often come, and when that roller coaster dips down, you'll find it's a lot more difficult to pick yourself up. The first challenge, I often talk about talent management as, it's one thing being great, it's an entirely different thing to achieve greatness. And then it's a completely new world to get a great person to achieve that greatness. And I don't consider myself as someone who's got exceptional skills. I don't think I'm any different to half the people, 80% of the people in this room. All I do is I spend 80% of my time managing people. I spend my time trying to motivate and encourage a brilliant coder to, stop looking at videos about, Bill Gates or Zuckerberg spending all his money, and let's do something that could actually have the same impact within South Africa.
And a third more relevant point, especially when you start a company and it's a startup, is the discipline phase. So we had 5 co-founders. We actually still have 5 co-founders. But you can imagine moving from a totally egalitarian, democratic way of doing things to one where you need to have a structure, because the client needs to know, where does the buck stop, who's dealing with the services, who do I call up when I have problems. And we started seeing that discipline was the most important one. And also realizing, as Adam Smith said, division of labor. But also realizing that when you divide this labor, you're still all part of one machine that's going towards the same direction. So for us, it became streamlining processes, but not excluding each other from it and moving together as a unit. And the final one was the lifeblood of almost every business, which is what we're not taught. Dave, you didn't tell us this in first year. Cash flow. It's wonderful to have all these ideas and want to go out and make an impact, but you still have to eat. You want to look good, or you've got dependents, or whatever it is. And for us, that was the final sort of like nut that we needed to really hit into our machine. And when we got the cash flow correct via advisors and mentors, and just going out and telling people, like, this is what we're really facing. How do we price this? What's the market say? we started working appropriately. And there's that collaboration thing again, where the end story is usually about one person, but no one talks about what happens there in the back.
Going a step back again. The discipline, it's funny that you think that this is a challenge because, when I was in varsity, I was always like, I don't want to go into corporate. Bankers work 9 till 10 in the night or 7 a.m. I hate waking up early and I have to be in the office again 7 a.m. and I leave at 12. How does that make sense? Can't do it. But, what you often forget is that, whilst that life and that dependency, the job will get done. Whether you do it or not, someone else will pick up and do it. When you're an entrepreneur, if you don't do it, that KFC bucket all of a sudden looks so much more difficult to get the next day because that dependency is on you. If you don't do it, no one else will. And you often find that you work more hours. You have more deadlines because now a client expects a product on Monday and you've promised them a product on Monday. And come Monday, if you don't have a product, you don't have a client anymore. And really building that discipline is something that, is really, it ties into the cash flow again. And then lastly, the anatomy of an entrepreneur. Knowledge. It's one thing to be academically gifted and a completely other thing to have an entrepreneurial mindset. If you're going to pitch this wonderful idea about changing education, if I ask you what's the dropout rate in South Africa right now, make sure you know it. If you're going to pitch about social networking and IT, make sure you familiarize yourself with the IT world and how it works. I never knew what UI, UX, what wireframing is, but I found myself, I had to learn tech talk. I had to be able to talk to a developer and almost see eye to eye, even though they're sort of looking down at me like, who's this guy trying to come into my field? But at the core of everything is that passion and fire. And I like to give a nice example about my friends who, after writing an accounts exam, they all come back to me and, accounts has got this way of sucking out that everything from your soul. And they come to me like, Kennedy, come, let's sit down and talk about ideas. What can I do to make money now? Like, accounting's not looking so good, so that bank or that auditing firm is not going to hire me. So let me go into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has become this fallback option that we resort to when academics is not going well. But without that passion and fire, it really counts for nothing.
And finally, for me, it's just a simple story of serving a purpose. It's one thing to earn an income, it's another to serve a purpose. One businessman told me when he got the first investment in his company, which later on became a listed company, was you could only build one person, you could only build one life. You can build many businesses and you can build many careers. So after balancing the two, you can realize what you actually really want, because that one life, it's only once. And this is our love affair of entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you very much.